Okay, hello, hi. My name's Kate Sicolo and I'm the anti-bullying and homophobia worker down in Cornwall. I work for a Southwest lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans charity called the Intercom Trust. And what I really want to do today is two things. The first thing I want to do is to highlight some of the education work that's going on in Cornwall to explain to you what you can do if you can persuade your local authority to fund one worker, what one worker can do for anti-homophobia work in a county. And the second thing I want to do is to give you a really best practice example from one of our little primary schools, so a very small primary school with 68 children, and to talk to you about how they're beginning to do LGBT inclusion work. So the idea is that you'll come away with some really practical hands-on stuff that you can take away and you can do yourself, okay? But first, to kind of give you some background to my job and my role, Cornwall is the only county anywhere in the UK to have a dedicated local authority-funded anti-homophobia worker in schools. I am the only one. I don't understand why this is the case. I don't get it. And it means that we can do all kinds of things in Cornwall because there's somebody in post to coordinate everything that's going on. So I have a responsibility for every school in the county, 33 secondaries, and all of the feeder primaries. It's about 100,000 young people in Cornwall. So it's a really massive number of children, but it means that there's somebody for everybody to come to and something for everyone to go through. So last year, that meant that we worked with 70% of the secondary schools in the county to lead LGBT inclusion lessons. So that's me going in and delivering sessions with their young people. There are only 6 secondary schools in the whole of Cornwall that have not now had those sessions, and I've got bookings for 2 of them for this year. So that by February, there'll only be 4 schools in the whole county, 4 secondaries, that have not had LGBT inclusion lessons. And those lessons are really practical, very, very open, very student-led, and very, very discussion-based. I have never had a complaint from a parent or a family following one of those sessions. There have been no parental complaints and no parental comments that have got back to me at all, and I've had no children be removed from those sessions. So it kind of allows me to do that kind of thing. As well as that, I provide one-to-one support for any young person who identifies as LGBT or thinks they might be, or any young person who's being homophobically bullied, because I think we forget that lots of young people who experience homophobic bullying are not necessarily LGBT. So last year I provided 93 one-to-one sessions with young LGBT people who needed individual help. And schools in Cornwall are so grateful that there is now somebody to phone when they're in that situation. There's somebody that you can go to. I worked with over 8,000 young people last year, so one academic year, one worker, you can see 8,000 children, and worked on issues of homophobia, bullying, and LGBT isolation with those children. Because we have a dedicated worker, we are really able to push anti-homophobia initiatives and positive initiatives like LGBT History Month. So it's a contracted requirement in my job role that I will coordinate things in the county for History Month, so that you can kind of guarantee that things will be going on. And that meant that last year, 1,526 pupils had specific History Month lessons which were delivered by me. And I deliver those between January and March because February is such a little month. And by the time I've come up here for the conference, and and then we have half term, which is really difficult. So February for me is too short, and I have LGBT history term in Cornwall, and I do a 3-month little stint of tours around schools. But every secondary school in the county was offered LGBT history lessons last year, and this year I'll also be offering to primaries. But I'm currently limited by the capacity of what one person can do. You know, I have bookings every day until the middle of January. I don't have a free day till the middle of January, and I see between 2 and 4 schools a day. I am doing as much work as it's possible to do in the number of hours I have in a week. I could have another worker and I could keep them occupied for 35 hours a week as well. So it makes me wonder, what's happening to all this work in other counties, in boroughs in London, why this work isn't going on in other places. So we did lots of other things for History Month, supported History Pride in Exeter with our community development team, had a panel evening at the local museum and Sue came down. The biggest thing I did for History Month last year was to work on the toolkit which was launched at this conference. And that really gave me a piece of solid guidance which I could give to schools. So all the lesson plans which are in the toolkit, which I wrote last year, could then be offered to all of the schools in county. But I think in Cornwall we recognise that it's not enough to simply offer schools guidance. There's fantastic guidance about now. The DCSF guidance is really good, but it's not enough. There's enormous barriers to teachers actually taking that work on and delivering it. You know, things like the fear of community reprisals, even though I can say to schools, look, I don't ever get complaints. I don't have complaints. It's not a problem. In the minds of many teachers, it's a massive issue. The fear of getting it wrong is a massive issue for members of school staff. And I think what's quite unique about Cornwall and the way we work is that because I'm there, and because I'm doing it, I'm able to give a real confidence to members of school staff, and you're able to give a confidence that this will be all right, this is an okay thing to do, and it allows you to really work practically to break down those barriers. And I think one of the best examples we've got of it is Gwynedd School, the little primary school I'm going to talk to you about, and their equality diversity focus. So they decided as a school that they would have an equality diversity focus for a year. They made it a priority area in their school improvement plan, which meant that they had to demonstrate how they had met that area and how they'd improved in that way. The first thing they did was a self-assessment, really important step, involving all of the stakeholders in the school. So they talked to children who were 5 about difference, about different kinds of families, and about how the school was working with that. And then they talked to children who were 11 in a much more complicated way and looked at questionnaires and things much more in depth. But it was very important for the school to involve every child. Every child was allowed to say what they thought. They also involved all the parents from the very beginning. So when they set it as a priority in the school improvement plan, they told all the parents that that was coming, which meant that parents were prepared and knew the steps that they were going to take. So when they did the self-assessment, there was a self-assessment form for parents, which parents were invited to complete. They set areas for improvement from their self-assessment, and then they wrote a really fantastic equality and diversity scheme, which was then used as a model for the county, but it was written at Gwynedd, which meant that they had the framework, they had a basis from which to build. And they decided that the way that they wanted to look at LGBT inclusion, the inclusion of wider diversity, was to have a Modern Britain week. So this was the timetable for the week. And they tried to look at activities which focused on bits of all the different strands. So they did a really wide range of things. They had Russian and migrant worker lessons in a yurt in the field. They had LGBT awareness sessions with a local gay dad who worked for a gay charity, came in and talked to the children about how it felt to be a parent and what the lessons that he gave to his children. They did appropriate language, anti-racism session. They did lots of Gypsy Roma traveller work because we have a very high Gypsy Roma traveller population in Cornwall. But also work on things like Cornish language, so building it in to that kind of cultural background. As well as work for children, there was lots of work for staff. So the staff on the Monday did a great big staff training session, and Simon Carpenter, who is the local gay dad, came to that session and did an hour and a half with all staff and parents. Any parent was invited to attend, and staff came from 3 other schools. They did 4 schools together, and staff and parents and governors all talking about LGBT parenting issues. And it was a very human session, which I think really helped. It was really about how Simon felt going into a playground as a gay dad and how isolating he had found that experience, and staff found that really, really useful.